Through the centuries, the Kailasha mantle was passed from one Siddha yogi to the next. Among these luminaries was the nameless rishi from the Himalayas, who in the 1700s entered a tea shop in a village near Bangalore, sat down and entered into deep samadhi. He did not move for 7 years, nor did he speak. Streams of devotees came for his darshana. Their unspoken prayers and questions were mysteriously answered in dreams or in written paper messages that manifested in the air and floated down. Then one day Rishi left the village, later to pass his power to Kadaitswami. The Tirumantiram expounds, "With Nandi's grace I sought the primal cause. With Nandi's grace I Shiva became. With Nandi's grace truth divine I attained. Om Namah Shivaya." Who were Kadaitswami and Chalapan? Sloka 154. Kadaitswami was a dynamic Satguru who revived Shaivism in Catholic-dominated Jaffna, Sri Lanka in the 1800s. Chelapaswami was an ardent sage ablaze with God consciousness, immersed in divine soliloquy. Om. Bhashya. Kadaitswami was a powerful Siddha standing 2 meters tall, whose fiery marketplace talks converted thousands back to Shaivism. It is said he was a high court judge who refused to confer the death penalty and renounced his career at middle age to become a sannyasin. Directed by his Satguru to be a worker of miracles, he performed siddhis that are talked about to this day, turning iron to gold, drinking molten wax, disappearing and appearing elsewhere. Chelapaswami, initiated at age 19, lived alone in the Teradi at Nallur temple. Absorbed in the inner self, recognizing no duality, he uttered Advaitic axioms in constant refrain. There is no intrinsic evil. It was all finished long ago. All that is truth. We know not. The Nachintanai says, laughing, Chelapan roams in Nallur's precincts, appearing like a man possessed. He scorns all outward show. Dark is his body, his only garment rags. Now all my sins have gone, for he has burnt them up. Always repeating something softly to himself, he will impart the blessing of true life to anyone who ventures to come near him, and he has made a temple of my mind. Om Namah Shivaya. Who are the most recent Kailasa gurus? Sage Yogaswami, source of Nachintanai, protector of Dharma, was Satguru of Sri Lanka for half a century. He ordained me with a slap on the back, commanding, "Go round the world and roar like a lion." Om Namah Shivaya. Bhashya. Amid a festival crowd outside Nallur temple, a disheveled sadhu shook the bars from within the chariot shed, shouting, "Hey, who are you?" And in that moment Yogaswami was transfixed. There is not one wrong thing. It is as it is. Who knows? Sage Chelapan said, and suddenly the world vanished. After Chelapan's Mahasamadhi in 1915, Yogaswami undertook 5 years of intense sadhana. Later, people of all walks of life, all nations, came for his darshana. He urged one and all to know thyself by thyself. It was in his thatched dung floor hermitage in 1949 that we first met. I had just weeks before realized Parashiva with his inner help while meditating in the caves at Jalani. "You are in me," he said. "I am in you," I responded. Later he ordained me Subramuniyaswami with a tremendous slap on the back, and with this diksha sent me as a sannyasin to America, saying, "You will build temples, you will feed thousands." I was 22 at the time, and he was 77. In fulfillment of his orders have I, Shivaya Subramuniyaswami, composed these 155 slokas and bhashyas, telling an infinitesimal fraction of all that he infused in me. Om Namah Shivaya. Scriptures speak on Parampara. There is no one greater in the 3 worlds than the Guru. It is he who grants divine knowledge and should be worshipped with supreme devotion. Atharva Veda. Abiding in the midst of ignorance, but thinking themselves wise and learned, fools aimlessly go hither and thither like blind led by the blind. Atharva Veda. Truth is the supreme is truth. Through truth men never fall from the heavenly world, because truth belongs to the saints. Therefore they rejoice in truth. Yajurveda. The supreme mystery in the Vedas end, which has been declared in former times, should not be given to one not tranquil, nor again to one who is not a son or a pupil, to one who has the highest devotion for God, and for his spiritual teacher even as for God. To him these matters which have been declared become manifest, if he be a great soul, yea, become manifest if he be a great soul. Yajurveda. Disciples get by devotion to the Guru the knowledge which the Guru possesses. In the three worlds this fact is clearly enunciated by divine sages, the ancestors and learned men. Guru Gita. It is laid down by the Lord that there can be no moksha, liberation, without diksha, initiation, and initiation cannot be there without a teacher. Hence it comes down the line of teachers, parampara, Kularnava Tantra. Though himself unattached, the Guru, after testing him for some time, on command of the Lord, shall deliver the truth to his disciple in order to vest him with authority. Of him who is so invested with authority, there is verily union with the supreme Shiva. At the termination of the bodily life, his is the eternal liberation. This is declared by the Lord. Therefore one should seek with all effort to have a Guru of the unbroken tradition, born of supreme Shiva himself. Kularnava Tantra. Without a teacher, all philosophy, traditional knowledge, and mantras are fruitless. Him alone the gods laud who is the Guru, keeping active what is handed down by tradition. Kularnava Tantra. I adore the lotus feet of the teachers who have shown to us the source of the eternal ocean of bliss, born of the self within, who have given us the remedy for the halahala poison of samsara. Guru Gita. Seek the Nathas who Nandinatha's grace received, first the Rishis four, Shiva Yoga the holy next, then Patanjali who is Sapa's holy precincts worshipped. Vragara and I complete the number 8, Tirumantaram. Nandinatha accepted the offering of my body, wealth, and life. He then touched me, and his glance dispelled my distressful karma. He placed his feet on my head and imparted higher consciousness. Thus he severed my burdensome cycle of birth. Tirumantaram. Night and day in Nallar's precincts, Chalapan danced in bliss. Even holy yogis merged in silence do not know him. He keeps repeating all is truth with radiant countenance. Night and day in Nallar's precincts, Chalapan danced in bliss. Nachintanai. Upagrantha. Resources. Shaiva Shraddha a Shaivite creed. Shiva Linga is the ancient mark or symbol of God. This elliptical stone is a formless form betokening Parashiva, that which can never be described or portrayed. The Pitha pedestal represents Shiva's manifest Parashakti, Om. A Shaivite creed. Every religion has a creed of one form or another, an authoritative formulation of its beliefs. Historically, creeds have developed whenever religions migrate from their homelands. Until then, the beliefs are fully contained in the culture and taught to children as a natural part of growing up. But when followers settle in other countries, where alien faiths predominate, the importance of a simple statement of faith arises. A creed is the distillation of volumes of knowledge into a series of easy-to-remember beliefs, or Shraddha. A creed is meant to summarize the specific teachings or articles of faith, to embed and thus protect and transmit the beliefs. Creeds give strength to individuals seeking to understand life and religion. Creeds also allow members of one faith to express, in elementary and consistent terms, their traditions to members of another. Though the vast array of doctrines within the Sanatana Dharma has not always been articulated in summary form, from ancient times unto today we have the well-known creedal Mahavakya, great sayings of the Vedic Upanishads. Now in this technological age in which village integrity is being replaced by worldwide mobility, the importance of a creed becomes apparent if religious identity is to be preserved. We need two kinds of strength, that which is found in diversity and individual freedom to inquire, and that which derives from a union of minds in upholding the universal principles of our faith. The 12 beliefs on the following pages embody the centuries-old central convictions of Shaivism, especially as postulated in the Advaita Ishvaravada philosophy of Shaiva Siddhanta. Yea, this Shaiva Dharma Shraddha is a total summation of Dancing with Shiva, Hinduism's contemporary catechism. Om Namah Shivaya. Belief number 1. Regarding God's unmanifest reality, Shiva's followers all believe that Lord Shiva is God, whose absolute being, Parashiva, transcends time, form, and space. The yogi silently exclaims, "It is not this, it is not that. Yea, such an inscrutable God is God Shiva." Om. Belief number 2. Regarding God's manifest nature of all-pervading love, Shiva's followers all believe that Lord Shiva is God, whose immanent nature of love, Parashakti, is the substratum, primal substance, or pure consciousness flowing through all form as energy, existence, knowledge, and bliss. Om. Belief number 3. Regarding God as personal Lord and Creator of all, Shiva's followers all believe that Lord Shiva is God, whose immanent nature is the primal soul, Supreme Mahadeva, Parameshvara, author of Vedas and Agamas, the creator, preserver, and destroyer of all that exists. Om. Belief number 4. Regarding the elephant-faced deity, Shiva's followers all believe in the Mahadeva Lord Ganesha, son of Shiva Shakti, to whom they must first supplicate before beginning any worship or task. His rule is compassionate, his law is just, justice is his mind. Om. Belief number 5. Regarding the deity Kartikaya, Shiva's followers all believe in the Mahadeva Kartikaya, son of Shiva Shakti, whose veil of grace dissolves the bondages of ignorance. The yogi locked in lotus venerates Murugan. Thus restrained, his mind becomes calm. Om. Belief number 6. Regarding the soul's creation and its identity with God, Shiva's followers all believe that each soul is created by Lord Shiva and is identical to him, and that this identity will be fully realized by all souls when the bondage of anava, karma, and maya is removed by his grace. Om. Belief number 7. Regarding the gross, subtle, and causal planes of existence, Shiva's followers all believe in 3 worlds: the gross plane, where souls take on physical bodies, the subtle plane, where souls take on astral bodies, and the causal plane, where souls exist in their self-effulgent form. Om. Belief number 8. Regarding karma, samsara, and liberation from rebirth, Shiva's followers all believe in the law of karma, that one must reap the effects of all actions he has caused, and that each soul continues to reincarnate until all karmas are resolved and moksha, liberation, is attained. Om. Belief number 9. Regarding the 4 margas, or stages of inner progress, Shiva's followers all believe that the performance of charya, virtuous living, kriya, temple worship, and yoga, leading to Parashiva through the grace of the living Satguru, is absolutely necessary to bring forth jnana, wisdom. Om. Belief number 10. Regarding the goodness of all, Shiva's followers all believe there is no intrinsic evil. Evil has no source, unless the source of evil's seeming be ignorance itself. They are truly compassionate, knowing that ultimately there is no good or bad, but all is Shiva's will. Om. Belief number 11. Regarding the esoteric purpose of temple worship, Shiva's followers all believe that religion is the harmonious working together of the 3 worlds, and that this harmony can be created through temple worship, wherein the beings of all 3 worlds can communicate. Om. Belief number 12. Regarding the 5 letters, Shiva's followers all believe in the Panchakshara mantra, the 5 sacred syllables, Namah Shivaya, as Shaivism's foremost and essential mantra. The secret of Namah Shivaya is to hear it from the right lips at the right time. Om. Shatshaiva Sampradaya, 6 schools of Shaivism. Naga, the cobra, is a symbol of Kundalini power, cosmic energy coiled and slumbering within man. It inspires seekers to overcome misdeeds and sufferings by lifting the serpent power up the spine into God realization. Om. 6 schools of Shaivism. In the search for peace, enlightenment, and liberation, no path is more tolerant, more mystical, more widespread, or more ancient than Shaivite Hinduism. Through history, Shaivism has developed a vast array of lineages and traditions, each with unique philosophic, cultural, linguistic characteristics, as it dominated India prior to 1100, from the Himalayas to Sri Lanka, from the Bay of Bengal to the Arabian C. Here we seek to present the essential features of 6 major traditions, identifiable within the ongoing Shaiva context: Shaiva Siddhanta, Pasupada Shaivism, Kashmir Shaivism, Veera Shaivism, Siddha Siddhanta, and Shiva Advaita. It should be understood that this formal and somewhat intellectual division, however useful, is by no means a comprehensive description of Shaivism, nor is it the only possible list. In practice, Shaivism is far more rich and varied than these divisions imply. Take, for instance, the Shaivism practiced by 13 million people in Nepal, or 3 million in Indonesia, and 55 million Hinduized Javanese who worship Shiva as Batara. Ponder the millions upon millions of Smartas and other universalists who have taken Ganesha, Murugan, or Shiva as their chosen deity, or the legions of Ayyappan followers who worship devoutly in Lord Murugan's great South Indian sanctuaries. Consider the fact that only a handful of Kashmir's millions of Shiva worshippers would formally associate themselves with the school called Kashmir Shaivism. Similarly, in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu, where there are over 50 million worshippers of Shiva, only a well-informed minority would knowingly subscribe to Shaiva Siddhanta. Our discussion of these 6 schools and their related traditions is based upon historical information. There are wide gaps in the record, but we do know that at each point where the veil of history lifts, the worship of Shiva is there. In the 8,000-year-old Indus Valley, we find the famous seal of Shiva as Lord Pashupati. The seal shows Shiva seated in yogic pose. In the Ramayana, dated astronomically at 2000 BCE, Lord Rama worshipped Shiva, as did his rival Ravana. In the Mahabharata, dated at around 1300 BCE, we find again the worship of Shiva. Buddha, in 624 BCE, was born into a Shaivite family, and records of his time talk of the Shaiva ascetics who wandered the hills looking much as they do today. The Shaiva Agamas form the foundation and circumference of all the schools of Shaivism. The system of philosophy set forth in the Agamas is common to a remarkable degree among all these schools of thought. These Agamas are theistic, that is, they all identify Shiva as the Supreme Lord, immanent and transcendent, capable of accepting worship as the personal Lord, and of being realized through yoga. This, above all else, is the connecting strand through all the schools. Philosophically, the Agamic tradition includes the following principal doctrines. 1. The 5 powers of Shiva: creation, preservation, destruction, revealing, and concealing grace. 2. The 3 categories: Pati, Pasu, and Pasha: God, souls, and bonds. 3. The 3 bonds: Anava, karma, and maya. 4. The threefold power of Shiva: Ikha, Kriya, and Jnana Shakti. 5. The 36 tattvas, or categories of existence, from the 5 elements to God. 6. The need for the Satguru and initiation. 7. The power of mantra. 8. The 4 padas: Charya, Kriya, Yoga, and Jnana. As we explore the individual schools and lineages within Shaivism, keep in mind that all adhere to these doctrines. Our discussion necessarily focuses on the differences between one school and another, but this is not meant to obscure the overwhelming similarity of belief and practice among them. Monism, dualism, and philosophies in between are all conveyed in the Shaiva Agamas. The various schools based on Agamas similarly vary in philosophic stance. Kashmir Shaivite tradition says that Shiva revealed different philosophies for people at different understanding, so that each could advance on the spiritual path toward the recognition of the innate oneness of man and God. Few worshippers of Shiva are now, or were in the past, familiar with the Agamas. Reading and writing were the domain of a few specially trained scribes, and today the Agamas remain mostly on the olai leaves upon which they have been transmitted for generations. Agamic philosophy and practices are conveyed to the common man through other channels, one of which is the Shaiva Puranas. These oral collections of stories about the gods are interspersed with agamic philosophy. For example, the Shiva Purana proclaims, Shiva is the great Atman because he is the Atman of all. He is forever endowed with the great qualities. The devotee shall realize the identity of Shiva with himself. I am Shiva alone. A second channel is the Shaivite temple itself, for the construction of the temples and the performance of the rituals are all set forth in the Agamas. In fact, it is one of their main subjects. The priests follow manuals called Padati, which are summaries of the instructions for worship contained in the Shaiva Agamas, specifically the Shodasha Upacharas, or 16 acts of puja worship, such as offering of food, incense, and water. A third channel is the songs and bhajanas of the sants, which in their simplicity carry powerful philosophic import. A fourth is the ongoing oral teachings of gurus, swamis, panditas, shastris, priests, and elders. Such matters of agreement belie the fact that Shaivism is not a single hierarchical system. Rather, it is 1,000 traditions, great and small. Some are orthodox and pious, while others are iconoclastic, and even, like the Kapalikas and the Agoris, fiercely ascetic, eccentric, or orgiastic. For some, Shiva is the powerful, terrible, awesome destroyer, but for most, he is love itself, compassionate and gentle. For nearly all the millions of Shiva's devotees, Shaivism is not therefore a school or philosophy, it is life itself. To them Shaivism means love of Shiva, and they simply follow the venerable traditions of their family and community. These men and women worship in the temples and mark life's passages by holy sacraments. They go on pilgrimages, perform daily prayers, meditations, and yogic disciplines. They sing holy hymns, share Puranic folk narratives, and recite scriptural verses. Still, it is useful for us all to understand the formal streams of thought which nurture and sustain our faith. Now, in our brief description of these 6 schools, we begin with today's most prominent form of Shaivism, Shaiva Siddhanta. Shaiva Siddhanta. Shaiva Siddhanta is the oldest, most vigorous, and extensively practiced Shaivite Hindu school today, encompassing millions of devotees, thousands of active temples, and dozens of living monastic and ascetic traditions. Despite its popularity, Siddhanta's glorious past as an all-India denomination is relatively unknown, and it is identified today primarily with its South Indian Tamil form. The term Shaiva Siddhanta means the final or established conclusions of Shaivism. It is the formalized theology of the divine revelations contained in the 28 Shaiva Agamas. The first known guru of the Suddha, pure Shaiva Siddhanta tradition was Maharishi Nandinatha of Kashmir, circa 250 BCE, recorded in Panini's Book of Grammar as the teacher of rishis, Patanjali, Vyagrapada, and Vashistha. The only surviving written work of Maharishi Nandinatha are 26 Sanskrit verses called the Nandikeshvara Kashika, in which he carried forward the ancient teachings. Because of his monistic approach, Nandinatha is often considered by scholars as an exponent of the Advaita school. The next prominent guru on record is Rishi Tirumalar, a Siddha in the line of Nandinatha who came from the valley of Kashmir to South India to propound the sacred teachings of the 28 Shaiva Agamas. In his profound work, the Tirumantiram, Sacred Incantation, Tirumalar for the first time put the vast writings of the Agamas and the Suddha Siddhanta philosophy into the melodious Tamil language. Rishi Tirumalar, like his Satguru Maharishi Nandinatha, propounds a monistic theism in which Shiva is both material and efficient cause, immanent and transcendent. Shiva creates souls and world through emanation from himself, ultimately reabsorbing them in his oceanic being, as water flows into water, fire into fire, ether into ether. The Tirumantaram unfolds the way of Siddhanta as a progressive, fourfold path of charya, virtuous and moral living, Kriya, temple worship, and Yoga, internalized worship, and union with Parashiva through the grace of the living Satguru, which leads to the state of jnana and liberation. After liberation, the soul body continues to evolve until it fully merges with God. Jiva becomes Shiva. Tirumalar's Sudha Shaiva Siddhanta shares common distant roots with Mahasiddhi Yogi Gorakshanatha's Siddha Siddhanta in that both are Natha teaching lineages. Tirumalar's lineage is known as the Nandinatha Sampradaya. Gorakshanatha's is called the Adinatha Sampradaya. Shaiva Siddhanta flowered in South India as a forceful bhakti movement infused with insights on Siddha Yoga. During the 7th to 9th centuries, Saints Shambandar, Apar, and Shundarar pilgrimaged from temple to temple, singing soulfully of Shiva's greatness. They were instrumental in successfully defending Shaivism against the threats of Buddhism and Jainism. Soon thereafter, a king's prime minister, Manikavasagar, renounced a world of wealth and fame to seek and serve God. His heart-melting verses, called Tiruvakagam, are full of visionary experience, divine love, and urgent striving for truth. The songs of these four saints are part of the compendium known as Tirumurai, which along with the Vedas and Shaiva Agamas form the scriptural basis of Shaiva Siddhanta in Tamil Nadu. Besides the saints, philosophers, and ascetics, there were innumerable siddhas, accomplished ones, God-intoxicated men who roamed their way through the centuries as saints, gurus, inspired devotees, or even despised outcasts. Shaiva Siddhanta makes a special claim on them, but their presence and revelation cut across all schools, philosophies, and lineages to keep the true spirit of Shiva present on earth. These siddhas provided the central source of power to spur the religion from age to age. The well-known names include sage Agastya, Bogarishi, Tirumular, and Gorakshanatha. They are revered by the Siddha Siddhantins, Kashmir Shaivites, and even the Nepalese branches of Buddhism. In central India, Shaiva Siddhanta and the Sanskrit tradition was first institutionalized by Guhavashi Siddha, circa 675. The third successor in his line, Rudrasambhu, also known as Amardaka Tirthanatha, founded the Amardaka monastic order circa 775 in Andhra Pradesh. From this time, 3 monastic orders arose that were instrumental in Shaiva Siddhanta's diffusion through India, along with the Amardaka order, which identified with one of Shaivism's holiest cities, Ujjain, were the Matamayura order in the capital of the Chalukya dynasty near the Punjab, and the Madhumatya order of central India. Each of these developed numerous sub-orders as the Siddhanta monastics, full of missionary spirit, used the influence of their royal patrons to propagate the teachings in neighboring kingdoms, particularly in South India. From Matamayura, they established monasteries in Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra, and Kerala, circa 800. Of the many gurus and acharyas that followed, spreading Siddhanta through the whole of India, 2 siddhas, Sadyajyoti and Brihaspati of central India, circa 850, are credited with the systematization of the theology in Sanskrit. Sadyajyoti, initiated by the Kashmir guru Ugrajyoti, propounded the Siddhanta philosophical views as found in the Rarava Agama. He was succeeded by Ramakantha I, Srikantha Narayankantha, and Ramakantha II, each of whom wrote numerous treatises on Shaiva Siddhanta. Later, King Bhoja Paramara of Gujarat, circa 1018, condensed the massive body of Siddhanta scriptural texts that preceded him into a one concise metaphysical treatise called Tattva Prakasha, considered a foremost Sanskrit scripture on Shaiva Siddhanta. Affirming the monastic view of Shaiva Siddhanta was Sri Kumara, circa 1056, stating in his commentary, Tatparya Dipika, on Bhojaparamara's works that Pati, Pasu, and Pasha are ultimately one, and that revelation declares that Shiva is one. He is the essence of everything. Sri Kumara maintained that Shiva is both the efficient and the material cause of the universe. Shaiva Siddhanta was readily accepted wherever it spread in India and continued to blossom until the Islamic invasions, which virtually annihilated all traces of Siddhanta from North and Central India, limiting its open practice to the southern areas of the subcontinent. It was in the 12th century that Agora Shiva took up the task of amalgamating the Sanskrit Siddhanta tradition of the north with the southern Tamil Siddhanta. As the head of a branch monastery of the Amardaka order in Chidambaram, Agora Shiva gave a unique slant to Shiva Siddhanta theology, paving the way for a new pluralistic school. In strongly refuting any monist interpretations of Siddhanta, Agora Shiva brought a dramatic change in the understanding of the Godhead by classifying the first 5 principles, or tattvas, Nada, Bindu, Sadashiva, Ishvara, and Sudavidya, into the category of pasha, bonds, stating they were effects of a cause and inherently unconscious substances. This was clearly a departure from the traditional teaching in which these 5 were part of the divine nature of God. Agora Shiva thus inaugurated a new Siddhanta divergent from the original monistic Shaiva Siddhanta of the Himalayas. Despite Agora Shiva's pluralistic viewpoint of Siddhanta, he was successful in preserving the invaluable Sanskrit rituals of the ancient Agamic tradition through his writings. To this day, Agora Shiva's Siddhanta philosophy is followed by almost all of the hereditary Shivacharya temple priests, and his Padati texts on the Agamas have become the standard puja manuals. His Kriya Krama Dukita is a vast work covering nearly all aspects of Shaiva Siddhanta ritual, including Diksha, Samskaras, Atmartha Puja, and installation of deities. In the 13th century, another important development occurred in Shaiva Siddhanta, where Meykandar wrote the 12-verse Shiva Jnana Bodham. This and subsequent works by other writers laid the foundation for the Meykandar Sampradaya, which propounds a pluralistic realism wherein God, souls, and world are coexistent and without beginning. Shiva is efficient but not material cause. They view the souls merging in Shiva as salt in water, an eternal oneness that is also two-ness. This school's literature has so dominated scholarship that Shaiva Siddhanta is often erroneously identified as exclusively pluralistic. In truth, there are 2 interpretations, one monistic and another dualistic, of which the former is the original philosophical premise found in pre-Meykandar scriptures, including the Upanishads. Shaiva Siddhanta is rich in its temple traditions, religious festivals, sacred arts, spiritual culture, priestly clans, monastic orders, and guru-disciple lineages. All these still thrive. Today, Shaiva Siddhanta is most prominent among 60 million Tamil Shaivites who live mostly in South India and Sri Lanka. Here and elsewhere in the world, prominent Siddhanta societies, temples, and monasteries abound. Pashupata Shaivism. The Pashupatas, from Pashupati, a name of Shiva meaning Lord of Souls, are the oldest known sect of Shaivite ascetic monks. They wandered, pounding the dust with iron tridents and stout staffs, their only hair snarled in unkept coils or tied in a knot. Faces wrinkled with intense devotion, piercing eyes seeing more Shiva than world, loins wrapped in deerskin or bark. The Pasupatas were bhaktas and benign sorcerers of Shiva, estranged from the priest-dominated Vedic society. Religious turbulence in India intensified as the dual waves of Shaivite agamic theism and Buddhism washed over the Gangetic plain. The ways of the Pashupatas were chronicled by several sometimes hostile contemporary commentators of that distant period. leaving us with a mixed impression of their life and philosophy. They originally allowed anyone to follow their path, which was not caste discriminative. As the popularity of the Pashupata lineage rose, high numbers of Brahmins defected to it to worship Shiva in unhindered abandon. Eventually, it was preferred for a Pashupata to come from the Brahmin caste. The relationship between these Pasupata monks and the ash-smeared sadhus of Buddha's time, or the makers of the Indus Valley seal depicting Shiva as Pasupata, is not known. They are perhaps the same, perhaps different. The Pasupata sadhus evoked sheer religious awe. Theirs was a brave, ego-stripping path meant to infuse the seeker with Lord Shiva's karunya, compassionate grace. Their austerity was leavened with puja rites to Shiva, with a profound awareness of the cosmos as Shiva's constant becoming, and with an almost frolicsome spirit of love toward him. Sadhana began with a strict code of ethics called yamas and niyamas, stressing brahmacharya, continence, ahimsa, non-injury, and tapas, asceticism. As detailed in their scriptures, their discipline was practiced in stages. First, they assumed vows and practiced special disciplines among themselves, which included Shiva-intoxicated laughing, singing, and dancing. Next, they dispersed into mainstream society, living incognito. There, they perpetrated outrageous acts to purposely invite public censure, such as babbling, making snorting sounds, walking as if crippled, talking nonsense, and wild gesturing. This sadhana was a means of self-purification, of rooting out egoism, of getting over the need to be accepted by the public, by friends, or by neighbors, and to fully establish in the subconscious the knowledge that like and dislike, good and bad, and all these human ways of thinking and feeling are equal if one's love of Lord Shiva is sufficiently strong. This was designed to break their links with human society and with their own humanness that came with them when they were born. Returning to overt sadhana, they practiced austerities, then abandoned all action to perform kundalini yoga, and so to achieve perpetual nearness to God Shiva. When union matured, they acquired supernatural powers, such as omniscience. The Pasupatas believed that when a person is firm in virtue and able to accept with equanimity all abuse and insult, he is well established in the path of asceticism. Sri Kandinya wrote in his 6th century commentary Panchartha Bhashya on the Pashupata Sutra, and the Pasupata yogi should appear as though mad like a pauper, his body covered with filth, letting his beard, nails, and hair grow long without any bodily care. Hereby he cuts himself off from the estates, varna, and stages of life, ashramas, and power of dispassion is produced. Pashupatism is primarily an ascetics path that rejects dialectical logic and prizes sadhana as a means to actuate Lord Shiva's karunya. Seekers embrace strict yama-niyama vows, their sadhanas graduating from action to non-action. Worshipful action includes puja, penance, nama Shivaya japa, wearing sacred ash, and showing abandoned love of God Shiva. The sect was said to have been founded by Lord Shiva himself, who imparted the doctrines to certain Maharishis around 200 CE. Pashupata's most historically prominent Satguru, Lakulisha, appeared in what is today India's state of Gujarat. According to the Caravana Mahatmya, he was born to a Brahmin family but died in his 7th month after displaying remarkable spiritual powers. His mother cast his body into a river, a traditional form of infant burial, and a group of tortoises carried it to a powerful Shiva shrine. There the boy returned to life and was raised as an ascetic. By another account, Lakulisha, Lord of the Staff, was an anchorite who died and was revived by Lord Shiva, who entered his body to preach the Pasupata Dharma to the world. The site of his appearance is a town known today as Kayavarohana, incarnation in another's body. The miracle is still festively celebrated. 2 stone inscriptions in the village honor the names of this Satguru's 4 main Shishyas, Kushika, Gargya, Maitreya, and Kurusha. Satguru Lakulisha is a dynamic Pashupata reformist. In his sutras outlining the bold codes of conduct and yoga precepts, he restricted admittance to the three higher castes, Vaishya, Kshatriya, and Brahmin, in an attempt to link this school with Vedic orthodoxy. A popular householder path arose out of this exclusively ascetic order. Today, numerous Pashupata centers of worship are scattered across India, where Satguru Lakulisha as Shiva is often enshrined. His image on the face of a Shiva linga seated in lotus posture, virilely naked, holding a danda in his left hand and a citron fruit in his right. Their most revered temple, Somanatha, is in Gujarat, a powerful, active temple which has endured several cycles of destruction and rebuilding. A 7th century Chinese traveler, Xuanzang, wrote that 10,000 Pashupatas then occupied Varanasi. The Pasupata tradition spread to Nepal in the 8th century, where the now famous Pashupatinath temple became a prime pilgrimage center and remains so to this day. At its medieval zenith, Pashupatism blanketed western, northwestern, and southeastern India, where it received royal patronage. In the 15th century, it retreated to its strongholds of Gujarat, Nepal, and the Himalayan hills. Traditionally, the deepest Pashupata teachings have been kept secret, reserved for initiates who were tried, tested, and found most worthy. Central scriptures are the Pashupata Sutras ascribed to the Venerable Lakulisha, Kaundinya's commentary on them, Panchartha Bhashya, circa 500, and the Mrigindra Agama. The Pashupata philosophy prior to Lakulisha was dualistic. Little is known of it, as no writings remain, but scholars have discerned from preferences to Pashupata by other ancient writers that it regarded Shiva as only the efficient cause of the universe, not the material. It posited 5 primary categories: cause, effect, union, ritual, and liberation. The latter category was somewhat unusual, as the Pashupatas believed the soul never merged in Shiva, and that liberation was simply a state with no further pain. They taught that God can create changes in the world and in the destinies of men according to his own pleasure. God does not necessarily depend upon the person or his karma, actions. Lakulisha's Pasupata system retained the idea of 5 categories, but regarded the goal of the soul as attainment of divine perfection. Further, he put God as the material cause of the universe, effectively moving the philosophy from dualism to dual non-dual. The soul, Pashu, is prevented from closeness to Shiva by Pasha, fetters. The soul retains its individuality in its liberated state, termed Sayujya, defined as closeness to, but not complete union with God. Lord Shiva has no power over liberated souls. The Kapalika skull-bearers sect developed out of the Pashupatas and were likewise, but perhaps justifiably, vilified by their opponents. At worst, they are portrayed as drunken and licentious, engaged in human sacrifice and practicing the blackest of magic. Other portrayals are more benign. For example, in the early Sanskrit drama Malati Madhava, a Kapalika says with great insight, "Being exclusively devoted to alms alone, penance alone, and rites alone, all this is easy to obtain. Being intent upon the self alone, however, is a state difficult to obtain. Even today, followers of this sect are found begging food which they accept in a skull, preferably that of a Brahmin. Some scholars see a connection between the Kapalikas and the later Gorakshanatha yogis. In the 7th century, another sect developed out of the Pashupata tradition, the Kalamukas, black-faced, who established a well-organized social structure with many temples and monasteries in what is now Karnataka and elsewhere. Like the earlier Pashupatas, they suffered vilification at the hands of hostile commentators. Nothing is left of their scriptures, hence details of their philosophy and life is obscure. However, the esteem in which they were once held is reflected in an 1162 inscription on one of their temples, stating in part that it was a place devoted to the observances of Shiva saints, leading perpetually the life of celibate religion religious students, a place for the quiet study of 4 Vedas, the Yoga Sutras, and the other kinds of learning, a place where food is always given to the poor, the helpless, the musicians and bards whose duty it is to awaken their masters with music and songs, and to the mendicants and all beggars, a place where many helpless sick people are sheltered and treated, a place of assurance of safety for all living creatures. The Virashaiva school is thought by scholars to have developed out of and eventually replaced the Kalamukas, apparently taking over their temples and ashramas. Today's reclusive Pashupata monks live in northern India and Nepal and influence followers worldwide. Virashaivism. Virashaivism is one of the most dynamic of modern-day Shaivite schools. It was made popular by the remarkable South Indian Brahmin Sri Bashavana, 1105 to 1167. Adherents trace the roots of their faith back to the rishis of ancient times. Vira, heroic Shaivites, are also known as Lingayats, bearers of the linga. All members are to constantly wear a linga encased in a pendant around the neck. Of this practice, Thavathiru Santalinga Ramasamy of Coimbatore recently said, "I can say that Virashaiva worship is the best form of worship because Shiva Linga is worn on our body and it unites the soul with the omnipresence. We are always in touch with Lord Shiva without even a few seconds break." Followers are also called Lingavantas and Shivasaranas. Like the 16th century Protestant revolt against Catholic authority, the Lingayat movement championed the cause of the downtrodden, rebelling against a powerful Brahminical system which promoted social inequality through a caste system that branded a whole class of people, Harijans, as polluted. Going against the way of the times, the Lingayats rejected Vedic authority, chaste hierarchy, the system of 4 ashramas, a multiplicity of gods, ritualistic and self-aggrandizing priestcraft, animal sacrifice, karmic bondage, the existence of inner worlds, duality of God and soul, temple worship, and the traditions of ritual purity pollution. Virashaiva tradition states that Bashavana was a reflective and defiant youth who rejected much of the Shaivism practiced in his day, tore off his sacred thread, Yajnapavita, at age 16, and fled to Sangama, Karnataka. He received shelter and encouragement from Ishanya Guru, a Shaivite Brahmin of the prevailing Kalamuka sect, and studied under him at his monastery temple complex for 12 years. There he developed a profound devotion to Shiva as Lord Kudal Sangama, Lord of the Meeting Rivers. At age 28, Bashavana arrived at the insight that the brotherhood of man rests on the doctrine of a personalized individual godhood in the form of Ishtalinga, chosen or personal linga. This spiritual realization gave rise to the central Virashaiva belief that the human body is to be revered as a moving temple of the Lord, to be kept in a perpetual state of purity and sublimity. Near the completion of his studies at Sangama, Basvana had a vivid dream in which the Lord Kudala Sangama touched his body gently, saying, "Bashavana, my son, the time has come at last for your departure from this place. There is Bijala in Mangalavidi. Carry on your work of building a just society from there." Having received these inner orders, he journeyed to Mangalavidi and sought service in the court of Bijala. He rose to become chief officer of the royal treasury, minister to this Maharaja in his troubled Shaivite country at odds with Buddhism and Jainism. This position led to the swift spreading of Bashavana's revolutionary message of a new visionary religious society. Bashavana wedded 2 wives, taking on the householder dharma, exemplifying his teaching that all followers, not only renunciates, can live a holy life. He gave discourses each evening, denouncing caste hierarchy, magical practices, astrology, temple building, and more, urging growing crowds of listeners to think rationally and worship Shiva as the god within themselves. Here Vasavana lived and preached for 20 years, developing a large Shaivite religious movement. The function of gathering for discourse became known as Shiva Nubhava Mandapa, Hall of Shiva Experience. At age 48, he moved with King Bijala to Kalyana, where, joined by Alama Prabhu, his fame continued to grow for the next 14 years. Devotees of every walk of life flocked from all over India to join with him. Through the years, opposition to his egalitarian community grew strong among more conventional citizens. Tensions came to a head in 1167 when a Brahmin and Sudra, both Lingayats, married. Outraged citizens appealed to King Bijala, who took ruthless action and executed them both. The unstable political situation further deteriorated, and the king was shortly thereafter murdered by political opponents, or possibly by Lingayat radicals. Riots erupted, and the Lingayats were scattered far and wide. Vasavana, feeling his mission in the capital had come to an end, left for Sangama and shortly thereafter died at the age of 62. Leaders and followers transferred the institutional resources created in the urban Kalyana to the rural localities of Karnataka. In spite of persecution, successful spiritual leadership left a legacy of sainthood, including many women saints. If Basavana was the faith's intellectual and social architect, Alama Prabhu was its austerely mystical powerhouse. The doctrines of these two founders are contained in their vachanas, or prose lyrics. Virashaiva spiritual authority derives from the life and writings of these two knowers of Shiva and of numerous other Shiva Saranas, those surrendered to God. Roughly 450 writers of these scriptures have been identified. The vachanas, the sayings, scorn the Vedas, mock ritual, and reject the legends of gods and goddesses. The authors of these verses saw formal religions as the establishment static institutions that promise man security and predictability, whereas they knew that religion must be dynamic, spontaneous, freed of bargains extracted in exchange for salvation. These scriptures reject doing good so that one may go to heaven. Alama wrote, "Feed the poor, tell the truth, make water places for the thirsty and build tanks for a town. You may go to heaven after death, but you'll be nowhere near the truth of our Lord. And the man who knows our Lord, he gets no results." The vachanas are incandescent poetry full of humor, ridicule, and the white heat of truth-seeking, bristling with monotheism, commanding devotees to enter the awesome realm of personal spirituality. These poems, written in the Kannada language, are central in the religious life of Lingayats. Here are some samples. Ganachara wrote, "They say I have been born, but I have no birth, Lord. They say I have died, but I have no death, O Lord." Vasavana exclaimed, "Lord, the Brahmin priest does not act as he speaks. How is that? He goes one way, while the official code goes the other." Alama Prabhu said, "Then when there was neither beginning nor non-beginning, when there was no conceit or arrogance, when there was neither peace nor peacelessness, when there was neither nothingness nor non-nothingness, when everything remained uncreated and raw, you, Guhashvara, were alone all by yourself, present yet absent." Ironically, in the centuries following these days of reform, Virashaivism gradually reabsorbed much of what Vasavana had rejected. Thus emerged temple worship, certain traditions of ritual purity, giving gifts to gurus, and the stratification of society, headed up by two large hierarchical orders of Jangamas, resulting in the institutionalization of the crucial guru-disciple relationship, which by Virashaiva precept should be very personal. Efforts were made to derive Virashaiva theology from traditional Hindu scriptures, such as Agamas and Sutras, a need rejected by the early Saranas. To this day, by rejecting the Vedas, Lingayats continue to put themselves outside the fold of mainstream Hinduism, but in their acceptance of certain Shaiva agamas align themselves with the other Shaiva sects. Virashaivites generally regard their faith as a distinct and independent religion. The original ideals, however, remain embedded in Lingayat scripture, which is of three types. One, the Vachanas; two, historical narratives and biographies in verse; and three, specialized works on doctrine and theology. Among the most central texts are Bhasavana's Vachanas, Alama Prabhu's Mantra Gopya, Chennabasavana's Karana Hasuge, and the collected work called Sunya Sampadane. The monistic theistic doctrine of Virashaivism is called Shakti Vishishtadvaita, a version of qualified non-dualism which accepts both difference and non-difference between soul and God. Like rays are to the sun, in brief, Shiva and the cosmic force or existence are one. Shiva are you, you shall return to Shiva. Yet Shiva is beyond his creation, which is real, not illusory. God is both efficient and material cause. The soul, in its liberated state, attains undifferentiated union with Shiva. The Virashaiva saint Renukacharya said, like water placed in water, fire in fire, the soul that becomes mingled in the supreme Brahman is not seen as distinct. True union and identity of Shiva, Linga, and soul, Anga, is life's goal, described as shunya or nothingness, which is not an empty void. One merges with Shiva by Shatsthala, a progressive six-stage path of devotion and surrender; bhakti, devotion; mahesha, selfless service; prasada, earnestly seeking Shiva's grace; pranalinga, experience of all as Shiva; sarana, egoless refuge in Shiva; and aikya, oneness with Shiva. Each phase brings the seeker closer until soul and God are fused in a final state of perpetual Shiva consciousness, as rivers merging in the ocean. Virashaivism's means of attainment depends on the Panchachara, 5 codes of conduct, and Ashtavarana, 8 shields, to protect the body as the abode of the Lord. The 5 codes are Lingachara, daily worship of the Shivalinga; Sadachara, attention to vocation and duty; Shivachara, acknowledging Shiva as the one God and equality among members; Vrityachara, humility towards all creatures; and Ganachara, defense of the community and its tenets. The 8 shields are Guru, Linga; Jangama, wandering monk; Paduka, water from bathing the Linga or Guru's feet; Prasada, sacred offering; Vibhuti, holy ash; Rudraksha, holy beads; and mantra, Namah Shivaya. One enters the Virashaiva religion through formal initiation called Linga Diksha, a rite for both boys and girls, which replaces the sacred thread ceremony, and enjoins the devotee to worship the personal Shiva Linga daily. Lingayats place great emphasis on this life, on equality of all members, regardless of caste, education, sex, etc., on intense social involvement and service to the community. Their faith stresses free will, affirms a purposeful world, and avows a pure monotheism. Today, Virashaivism is a vibrant faith, particularly strong in its religious homeland of Karnataka, south-central India. Roughly 40 million people live here, of which perhaps 25% are members of the Virashaiva religion. There is hardly a village in the state without a Jangama and a Matha monastery. On the occasion of birth in a Lingayat family, the child is entered into the faith that same day by a visiting Jangama, who bestows a small Shiva Linga encased in a pendant tied to a thread. This same Linga is to be worn throughout life. Kashmir Shaivism. Kashmir Shaivism, with its potent stress on man's recognition of an already existing oneness with Shiva, is the most single-mindedly monistic of the six schools. It arose in the 9th century in northern India, then a tapestry of small feudal kingdoms. Maharajas patronized the various religions. Buddhism was still strong. Tantric Shaktism flourished toward the northeast. Shaivism had experienced a renaissance since the 6th century, and the most widespread Hindu god was Shiva. According to the traditions of Kashmir Shaivism, Lord Shiva originally set forth 64 systems or philosophies, some monistic, some dualistic, and some monistic, theistic. Eventually these were lost, and Shiva commanded sage Durvasas to revive the knowledge. Sage Durvasas' mind-born sons were assigned to teach the philosophies. Triyambaka, the monistic, Amardaka, the dualistic, and Srinatha, monistic theistic. Thus, Triyambaka at an unknown time laid a new foundation for Kashmir Shaiva philosophy. Then it is said Lord Shiva himself felt the need to resolve conflicting interpretations of the Agamas and counter the encroachment of dualism on the ancient monistic doctrines. In the early 800s, Sri Vasgupta was living on Mahadeva mountain near Srinagar. Tradition states that one night Lord Shiva appeared to him in a dream and told him of the whereabouts of a great scripture carved in rock. Upon awakening, Vasugupta rushed to the spot and found 77 terse sutras etched in stone, which he named the Shiva Sutras. Vasugupta expounded the sutras to his followers, and gradually the philosophy spread. On this scriptural foundation arose the school known as Kashmir Shaivism, Northern Shaivism, Pratyabhinja Darshana Recognition School, Pratyabhinja Darshana Recognition School, or Trikashana Triple Doctrine. Trika, Trinity, refers to the school's threefold treatment of the divine, Shiva, Shakti, and Soul, as well as to 3 sets of scriptures and some other triads. Kashmir Shaivite literature is in 3 broad divisions: Agama Shastra, Spanda Shastra, and Pratyabhijna Shastra. Agama Shastra includes works of divine origin, specifically the Shaiva Agama literature, but also including Vasugupta's Shiva Sutras. The Spanda Shastra, or Spanda Karikas, of which only 2 sutras are left, are both attributed to Vasugupta's disciple Kalata, circa 850 to 900. These elaborate the principles of the Shiva Sutras. The Prajnabhinja Shastra's principal components are the Shiva Drishti by Vasugupta's disciple Somananda and the Pratyabhijna Sutras by Somananda's pupil Utpaladeva, circa 900 to 950. Abhinavagupta, circa 950 to 1000, wrote some 40 works, including Tantraloka, Light on Tantra, a comprehensive text on agamic Shaiva philosophy and ritual. It was Abhinavagupta whose brilliant and encyclopedic works established Kashmir Shaivism as an important philosophical school. Kashmir Shaivism provides an extremely rich and detailed understanding of the human psyche and a clear and distinct path of Kundalini Siddha Yoga to the goal of self-realization. In its history, the tradition produced numerous Siddhas, adepts of remarkable insight and power. It is said that Abhinavagupta, after completing his last work on the Pratyabhijna system, entered the Bhairava cave near Mangam with 1,200 disciples, and he and they were never seen again. Kashmir Shaivism is intensely monistic. It does not deny the existence of a personal god or of the gods, but much more emphasis is put upon the personal meditation and reflection of the devotee and his guidance by a guru. Creation of the soul and world is explained as God Shiva's Abhasha shining forth of himself in his dynamic aspect of Shakti, the first impulse, called Spanda, as the self of all. Shiva is immanent and transcendent, and performs through his Shakti the 5 actions of creation, preservation, destruction, revealing, and concealing. The Kashmir Shaivite is not so much concerned with worshipping a personal god as he is with attaining attaining the transcendental state of Shiva consciousness. An esoteric and contemplative path, Kashmir Shaivism embraces both knowledge and devotion. Sadhana leads to the assimilation of the object world in the subject I, until the self, Shiva, stands revealed as one with the universe. The goal, liberation, is sustained recognition, pratyabhinja, of one's true self as nothing but Shiva. There is no merger of soul and God, as they are eternally non-different. There are three upayas, stages of attainment of God consciousness. These are not sequential, but do depend upon the evolution of the devotee. The first stage is anavapaya, which corresponds to the usual system of worship, yogic effort, and purification through breath control. The second stage is shaktapaya, maintaining a constant awareness of Shiva through discrimination in one's thoughts. The third stage is sambhavapaya, in which one attains constantly to God consciousness simply upon being told by the Guru that the essential self is Shiva. There is a fourth stage, anupaya, no means, which is the mature soul's recognition that there is nothing to be done, reached for, or accomplished except to reside in one's own being, which is already of the nature of Shiva. Realization relies upon the Satguru, whose grace is the blossoming of all sadhana. Despite many renowned gurus, geographic isolation in the Kashmir Valley, and later Muslim domination kept the following relatively small. Scholars have recently brought these scriptures to light again, republishing surviving texts. The original Parampara was represented in recent times by Swami Lakshman Jo. Today, various organizations promulgate the esoteric teachings to some extent worldwide. While the number of Kashmir Shaivite formal followers is uncertain, the school remains an important influence in India. Many Kashmir Shaivites have fled the presently war-torn valley of Kashmir to settle in Jammu, New Delhi, and elsewhere in North India. This diaspora of devout Shaivites may serve to spread the teachings into new areas. Shiva Advaita. Shiva Advaita is the philosophy of Srikantha as expounded in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya, a Shaivite commentary on the Brahma Sutras, circa 500 to 200 BCE. The Brahma Sutras are 550 terse verses by Badarayana summarizing the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Upanishads. The Brahma Sutras are 550 terse verses by Badarayana summarizing the Upanishads. The Brahma Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Upanishads are the three central scriptures of the various interpretations of Vedanta philosophy. Shankara, Ramanuja, and Madhva wrote commentaries on these books deriving three quite different philosophies, non-dualism, qualified non-dualism, and dualism, respectively, from the same texts. Each claimed this to be the true interpretation of the Vedas and vigorously refuted all other interpretations. Shankara was a monist and accorded worship of the personal god a lesser status. Ramanuja and Madhva, on the other hand, developed theistic philosophies in which devotion to Vishnu was the highest path. There was as yet no school of Vedanta elevating devotion to Shiva to similar heights. Srikantha sought to fill this gap. This resulting philosophy is termed Shiva Vishishtadvaita and is not unlike Ramanuja's qualified non-dualism. In the process of his commentary, Srikantha put Shaiva philosophy into Vedantic terminology. Srikantha lived in the 11th century. Of his personal life, virtually nothing is historically known, so the man remains a mystery, nor did he catalyze a social movement that would vie with Virashaivism or Shaiva Siddhanta. But from his writings it is clear that Srikantha was a masterful expositor and a devout lover of God Shiva. His influence was largely due to Appaya Dikshita, who wrote a compelling commentary on Srikantha's work in the 16th century as part as part of a successful multi-pronged attempt to defend Shaivism against the inroads of Vaishnava proselytization in South India. According to Srikanta, Shiva created the world for no purpose except out of play or sport. Shiva is the efficient cause of creation. As his Shakti, he is also the material cause. Shiva assumes the form of the universe, transforms himself into it, not directly but through his Shakti. Yet he is transcendent, greater than, and unaffected and unlimited by his creation. Shiva has a spiritual body and lives in a heaven more luminous than millions of suns, which liberated souls eventually can attain. Srikanta, in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya, said, at the time of creation, preceded by the first vibrations of his energies, solely through an impulse of will, independently of any material cause, and out of his own substance, he creates, that is, manifests, the totality of conscious and unconscious things. Purification, devotion, and meditation upon Shiva as the self, the akasha within the heart, define the path. Meditation is directed to the self, Shiva, the one existence that evolved into all form. Release comes only after certain preliminary attainments, including tranquility, faith, and non-attachment. Bonds which fetter the soul can be shattered in the torrent of continuous contemplation on and identification with the Supreme Shiva. Liberation depends on grace, not deeds. Upon death, the liberated soul goes to Shiva along the path of the gods without return to earthly existence.